U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer has come up with a list of things President Trump doesn't like when it comes to trade with Canada. That includes the dairy industry, the current boycott on buying American booze, as well as the streaming industry. The point man, Jamieson Greer, has told the U.S. Congress that Washington is not prepared to automatically extend the Canada trade agreement with the U.S. for another 16 years without addressing specific structural issues. And one of those is Canada's Online Streaming Act. He says the law discriminates against American tech and media firms and restricts digital trade. The Canadian government says the Online Streaming Act ensures Canadian stories, music widely available on streaming platforms to benefit future generations of content creators. The act also says broadcasters should be showcasing Canadian stories, music. The Americans call it protectionism. David McLaughlin is a former chief of staff to Brian Mulroney, and he's been following this closely here. Your take on how big of a deal this could be in terms of being a trade problem?
Well, every time you open up a trade agreement for renewal or a new administration, then irritants come up to the top of the list and they get plopped on the table. So it's not surprising that the U.S. at this stage is saying, okay, if we're going to do a whole new CUSMA arrangement, we're going to, we got to look at these things, and they just keep listing them off. That's kind of just the way it works. What Canada benefits from, of course, is a more structured approach, a more reliable approach, and is why the Prime Minister, both Prime Minister Trudeau and Mr. Carney, have tried to, get the Trump administration to detail what it is that they want in a long-term agreement, and then try to move that along. That hasn't been all that successful to date. So, we're still kind of in this back and forth, I think, Todd, and it's going to be for a while yet.
Tell me about, let's say, dairy industry and supply management. I mean, that's long been an irritant to the Americans, but of course you've got dairy farmers in some pretty key provinces who are following this very closely, and so there's always a political risk if the Canadian government makes concessions in the industry and opens it up to more American product.
Sure is. I mean, it's a classic example, and it's been the case back to the negotiation of the original Canada-U.S. Free Trade Agreement in 1988. Dairy, supply management issues, cultural issues, as we see in the Digital Services Tax, Online Streaming Act. These kinds of things are very sensitive in Canada, less sensitive in the U.S. in terms of protectionism. They want access to our market. They want any barriers, or whether they're tariff or non-tariff barriers, they want them lifted so they can get more access to the Canadian market. And so it's not surprising that we're going to have to do this dance one more time. It's a different administration with a different approach, and so we might have to make some adjustments. We might have to, allow greater access, perhaps through quotas or other things, for example, on the dairy side, while still preserving the overall mechanics, if you will, of and structure of supply management. So not unexpected, but again, we don't yet know, certainly publicly, what it is really the Americans want.
Yeah, and I also wonder just about, the tone, David, and the way this is all being handled, because it does kind of feel like Washington, and not just with Canada, but other countries, sharp elbows. They're really sort of pushing their way around.
Oh, it's definitely elbows up from the U.S. side, right? We've seen that repeatedly. And it's also very transactional and very irritant-driven. Here's a problem, you've got to fix it. And the emphasis is always on you. You, the other guy, you have to fix it on sort of our terms. There has not been an engagement or tone or approach, it seems, from the Trump administration. Okay, here's a broader way to do these things where we could have a more, agreeable, amenable economic and security relationship. Prime Minister Carney tried that and didn't get very far. He tried to work on sectoral tariff relief because the U.S. went down that path, and we didn't get that done. Now we're back into CUSMA, and everything is sort of potentially being rolled into that. So the tone very much matters. I think the tone of the Canadian government and our country remains open but firm. It's interesting that the U.S. trade negotiator is saying, by the way, you got to get that U.S. booze back on those provincial shelves, and because that's something that was done as a direct response to the American tariff threats and the U.S. 51st state stuff. So it hurt, and it shows we can push back. So tone definitely matters.
To see you. Much appreciate all your appearances with us here at CTV, and happy holidays. We'll talk in the new year.
You too, Todd. Take care.
David McLaughlin with his take.